Every who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton, but where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and no prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
There is no hood like parenthood. Hi, I'm Kanan Kapila. I'm a former CNN journalist, mom of 3, including twins, and host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my show, I interview change makers on their life lessons, legacy, and superpower of intuition, which I call our mom sense and dad sense. I've had the privilege of working with Mom 2.0, March of Dimes, and the White House, and have had some pretty amazing parents on my show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kelly Rowland.
Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton.
It's me, Bobby Brown. Can't wait to share my story.
That's Total Mom Sense is a production of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. To join my tribe, visit that'stotalmomsense.com and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. Now let's dive into today's episode. I often say your audience is built online, but your community is cultivated offline. This is a very special episode that was filmed in person at the exquisite Loopwell, a wellness and co-working space in the heart of Montclair, New Jersey. I interviewed my friend Neha Ruch, founder of Mother Untitled and author of The Power Pause. We also had a live panel discussion with Debbie Looney, CEO and co-founder of Loopwell, and Kanan Kapila, integrative psychotherapist, yoga teacher, and director of spiritual well-being at Loopwell. Listen in on our discussion about pauses, pivots, and finding your purpose. So I will do a quick intro of me. As Deb mentioned, my name is Kanika. I am a wife and mom of 3. I have Irish triplets. So I had Krish and Sohana, they are 7, and Trey, who's 6. Everyone in my household can't get enough of my boobs. And I feel like I'm everything to everyone, and they're not even that big. But I'm everything to everybody. Mm-hmm. And I know that everyone here feels that on some level. We wear so many hats. And I know that I found myself when I decided to take a pause and pivot. I left my career in television to start this podcast. And I'll take it back. So when I was a young girl, I had 2 goals in life. 1, to be a television anchor and, follow in the footsteps of Connie Chung, Diane Sawyer, Oprah. And 2, to be a mom. But breaking news doesn't really coincide with breastfeeding. And so I decided to take a shift. And when Neha wrote this book and started this movement, I felt so seen. And I know everyone here can feel that. So this is us. Follow Loop with Us, Mother Untitled, my handle for That's Total Mom Sense, and Kanan Kapila. Now on to personal stories. And Neha, I can't wait for you to start yours because we've bonded about this. We are the product of immigrant parents. We've immigrated from Bombay. I can just picture us on the plane with our 2 pigtails and a frock as toddlers. And it was at that time that I feel like even that, it's culminated into everything you do now and who you are. So tell us your own story, your birth story.
Hi, everyone. When I immigrated here, I'm so glad you are going back in time because I think so much of my childhood was spent trying to fit. I immigrated to an all-white town. I wish it had been as beautifully diverse and welcoming as Montclair, but that didn't exist outside of Boston in the early 80s. And, I have an incredible group of friends from there. It was a wonderful childhood. And yet I was always trying to contort myself to fit spaces. And I actually ended up taking a year off between high school and college. It was before they called it a gap year. And I went to India and I ended up teaching for a year. I don't know who allowed me to teach, but they did. And in that year, I think it was this separation from everyone else and this coming home to what really mattered to me and how I wanted to show up. And it made me stronger for it. And I ended up going back to college, finishing quickly, climbing the ladder very quickly in advertising, and then realizing I wanted another reset. And I went to business school because someone described it to me as this train stop to surround yourself with smart people and figure out what comes next, which is ironic because I think I found that in motherhood.
Yeah.
But flash forward, I left business school. I landed what on paper was my dream job. And then I had my first son. And I was rocking with him in this glider. And I felt for the first time, it wasn't that I wasn't leaking breast milk and it wasn't messy and I wasn't sleep deprived, but I felt at peace. I felt like I didn't have to contort myself to fit anymore. All I needed to be was exactly what he wanted, which was me. And there was something so freeing. And meanwhile, I think I was getting disenchanted. I was connecting with someone earlier who was saying, isn't it interesting that we're all at this re-examination point in our career? We've put 10, 15, 20 years into our career, and we're sort of naturally re-examining what we want. And that collided for me with motherhood. And so when I decided to initially downshift into 2 days a week and then eventually pause, it wasn't like I thought, oh, I'm giving up. It was, I want this space to grow up next to him and see what comes next. And so, that was the foundation really of me stepping into a chapter that I was so confident and clear was going to be enriching. And yet, I heard so much of pushback from society about what that was supposed to look like, what I was giving up on, if I was going to be bored all day. And that was the beginning of Mother Untitled and obviously the book now.
That's incredible. And Deb, can you share your personal story with us? Because it's culminated in this, which is just exquisite.
I love what both of you are doing because I'm a lot older, I'm 57. So, back then, there was a lot of stigmas, and you could not, even talk about that you were pregnant. I remember being in LA on a shoot, and I was a couple of months pregnant, and I remember having to pretend. I'm sure if there's anyone out there that can really understand what I'm saying, going to the bar and pretending that I was ordering a drink because I had to fit in, I had to be, I'm on the shoot, and I'm with a bunch of guys, and, pouring it out in the bush. So what you're doing is amazing because I have a lot of friends who, back then you either had to choose one or the other. And I love this pause, and I love that you can have one foot maybe in and in parenthood and at work. And I always somehow I kind of figured out how to do it. And it was me owning my own company, but it was really hard to do. So I started my own company so I could do that because there was no rules. There was no way I could do that in corporate America. So I was able to do both, and I was very lucky and blessed. But, right now, people need to fight for that a little bit more because it's not really, the norm. And I love with remote, that really helps, and hybrid and flexible workspaces, that always look for that because that's so important. So what you're doing, I have my daughter's in the back, she's 24, and I'm hoping that she will have to go through what I went through, and if there's anyone in this audience that can actually understand that place, you have come a long way. So, kudos to you guys for doing that.
And Kanan, share your story. I always think of Taylor Swift and her Eras tour. She doesn't even know the era is on the horizon. We've all had an evolution. And so share a little bit of yours.
So I too, I think share the immigrant story from India. And what I remember about all immigrants that I know is that they work their butts off. Like my parents had 2 or 3 jobs. They were never home. After school, my sister was playing varsity sports. She's here at the back. And so she wasn't home. And both of my parents didn't get home till like 7 or 8 o'clock. Monday through Saturday actually, and then they also started their own business. So I felt like I was very lonely. It was me and Days of Our Lives or General Hospital. I would back and forth. And I remember thinking way back then that when I had children, I want to really be present with them. Like that's one thing that I really wanted. I wanted to take that pause, not knowing it was a pause back then though. So thank you for really clarifying and defining it. And the other thing is that when I did become a mother, and I took that pause, I was really conscientious about if I were to go back, and when I do go back to career, what would I be doing? And it would always be about being of service. So as a therapist, pre-COVID, we didn't have virtual therapy. So it wasn't like stay at home and see clients online. That didn't happen, didn't exist. There was no pumps. There was one pump back then, and it was a handheld pump. We don't have these massive pumps that they have nowadays either. So I was really grateful that I was able to take that pause and really raise my children, and also pivot, come back to a career, and know that I was going to come back knowing that all the years that I spent being at home raising my children, taking all of that skill set, as a mother, has someone that's very present, monotasking and being attentive, I was going to take all of those skills and put it into my work, my career, when I see patients and clients. So.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Okay, now on to the next key is platform. And so, Neha, thank you for allowing us to shed the titles, because I feel like society really cares about the letters after our name. Our parents really care about the letters after our name. And so how do we, actually own shedding all that? And you've done it by creating a movement with Mother Untitled.
I've waffled over the years with shedding Mother Untitled because it's confusing. It's Neha Ruch, there's the power pause, and Mother Untitled, and I come from brand. I should know that, that's too much language, too many words. And yet it spoke so much to this very specific stage in my life, right? Untitled was about grappling with losing the worth that I derived from a title, which so many women in America do, as well as dismantling the black and white titles of stay at home and working. Because you saw in this room, more of us exist in the in-between, right? And it's not just right after baby. We're looking at 20 years of parenting experience in this room, right? It's a vast gray area. And what our goal is with this book is that if we dismantle stay at home and working mother, we can just exist in this fluid continuum and this narrative where you have to be one or the other, pits us against each other. Instead, can we dial up or dial down, make room for what matters without shame and without penalty? And so yes, Mother Untitled came out of that experience of not feeling like stay-at-home mother fit the reality I was stepping into, even if I was pausing my paid work. That language is so archaic. It implies stagnancy. It implies being shut in. The reality is, if you poll the American public right now as to what they think of with stay-at-home mother, they still say June Cleaver as the most popular female icon. And June Cleaver, for those of you too young to know, is not that I was alive, but it was in the 1950s and 1960s, was a very popular TV sitcom. She was apron clad. She was shut in. She was in servitude to her family and really nothing else. And the reality is, if you ask the American public who they think of with a working mother, they say Michelle Obama. And that is a power chasm that is just too wide when we all are really existing in between, and we're all trying to make room for family. We are all working. We are all mothering. And so, the goal really is to be able to create new language where, when we're answering that ominous question, what do you do? Which has come to stand in for who are you? We can just say, right now we'll see what comes next. Right now we get to be with our kids. We'll see what comes next. Right now I'm working on a podcast. We'll see what comes next. We allow ourselves to expand our sense of self so that our identity doesn't belong to who we work on. It's about what we care about, because ambition, dictionary definition, is the determination to do things you care about. It doesn't say what you're doing. And the reality is, we will care about a lot of different things over the long game of life. And so you are still ambitious, you are still modern, and we need language that sees that in us and doesn't count us out if we make any choice.
Yeah. Deb, I want you to speak to really the girl-on-girl crime that exists, because there, during that time there was like camps. It was you're a stay-at-home mom or you're a working mom, and I love how you debunk that. There's a coaster that says it: all mothers work, or all women work. Was it?
Every mother works.
Every mother works.
Every mother works. Every mother mothers.
Every mother mothers. Yes, and I love that you turned that into a verb. So tell us about how hard it was to be like, can we not be so contentious, or really spread the mom guilt on thick on each other?
Well, so the first thing that we did, we went to the pediatrician, and I wish everyone has a doctor like this. And if you don't, they should do this more often. I remember my first child, I went with my husband, who's in the back there, and this little baby, and we walk in, and he said, she has a full-time job, just like we have a full-time job. Like he's asking, how's your schedule going to be? And, I guess he's like, I don't know, I guess I'll go to sleep and go to work, and then she'll be with the baby, that kind of thing. And he said it straight, and I wish every doctor pulls every couple aside to say, this is a full-time job, what she's doing, and what she's doing is actually more important than what you're doing, actually. So she needs to get sleep. So we, right away, he set the stage. We had no idea. We go home, we made the schedule, and it was, alternating all through the night. And, he was tired going to work, but every couple really, I'm sorry if you have, people in your life that aren't doing that, you're going to go home and have big fights tonight. But it's true, and it's really good to have support. And it was always a 50-50 household, and that's how I was able to stay afloat. So that was just one thing that I wanted to say about that, because getting that support was huge. And you have to level set. So have a chat with your doctor, because it's good to get that, it was real direction from the doctor. But I do remember, because I worked, because I own my own business, I was able to go to everything. I barely missed anything. I was at the Halloween parade, I was able to leave work, and he would cover it, or I'd have a team to cover it. So I was able to go to everything. So the stay-at-home moms would confide in me. They would think oh, you're like a stay-at-home mom. So they would gossip and talk about the working moms. And then the working moms, because they knew I owned a business, would be gossiping about the stay-at-home moms. And it would be I'm not volunteering because, let the stay-at-home mom do it. I'm working. And I'm I'm just sitting in the background. And I would defend them. And then vice versa. The stay-at-home moms would be oh, they never do anything. They're always, leaving it to other people. So I was able to hear both sides, and the fact that you're trying to bridge that gap, I think, is huge. And I love that, because everybody is working, everybody has a stake in things, and there has to be definitely more respect. And I would always defend the others, because I was in both places, and I was lucky to actually experience both. So everyone needs to have respect, because, your kids and being a mom is a job. It is a job, and it should be recognized. So that was my funny story about that.
Can I just add, so just from a data perspective, 1 in 3 women who are currently working out of the home right now, full-time, are planning a pause in the next 2 years. 1 in 2 currently working full-time out of the home are planning a downshift of their hours in their next 2 years. 90% of women on career pauses aim to return to the workforce. We are all evolving, and we're all shifting. And so I think even the idea of camps, that was really a fiction invented by the media. Media loves a cat fight. And in the late 80s, they were oh, we see this brewing, right? There was Diane Keaton that represented baby boom. And then there was June Cleaver. And it was at the advent of second wave feminism was peaking, right? And we were looking at a world where we were advocating for our capacity in the workforce, which was so important. But everyone who was choosing otherwise was left with apron strings, defending tradition. And so we sort of got pitted against each other. And then when we start making it about the kids, right? And we're well, we're going to stay home with our kids because it creates secure attachment. And the other camp says, we're going to work out of the home because that models ambition for our kids. When we make it about the kids, you just dig in deeper. when in the reality is we're all making the right choice for us right now. Like I did not choose to pause my career because it was better for my kid. In fact, I think my kid would have been better off if he'd gone to daycare. He'd be like 100 times more social. And the reality is, and the reality is I made that choice because it was better for me in that stage of life. And I think if we start owning our choices for what they are, which is our choice, and knowing that it's for right now, and that we're actually all could get curious about what were our past lives, what are our interests right now, how might we support each other and get curious as opposed to competitive, we'll make a lot of progress in that regard.
Absolutely. And I love that you commissioned a survey, the American Mothers on Pause. That's how she has all these statistics, which is amazing. And Kanan, I wanted to switch gears and talk about purpose. And purpose is life calling. It's our dharma in Sanskrit. So how did you discover your dharma?
I think dharma changes at the different stages of life. So when I was a mom, my dharma, my purpose was to really be attentive and to really raise my children with 100% of, building their health and vibrancy and teaching them. So it was really the stage of my life was really, the purpose was to be there, be with them and take care of them actually. But it doesn't mean that the dharma, doesn't negate like my career and who I was prior to them and the fact that I was a therapist or I was taking care of other people and a doula, birth doula and all that stuff. But I will say your dharma on a higher level is really more about not what your title is at the given moment, but it goes beyond that. Like what is beyond your title? For a mother, it's caring and giving and nurturing and also being interdependent with other mothers. So I remember, like even my friend Eileen, who's in the audience, who's a writer, author, comedian here, we were talking about how there might be a mother who's in the workforce and her children are on the playground or need to get somewhere and just tag teaming. So calling up, someone that is at home, like, can you grab my child? Can you, show me the video they're playing their sports or something, but just that dharma of knowing that you are higher than just what your title is. So if you're a mom, doesn't mean that you're doing everything at home. If you're at your career, you're not doing everything at work. That your title goes beyond just being present. So I think your dharma changes as the stages of your life change, but not forgetting that your higher purpose is really truly about compassion and community and connecting and knowing that we're interdependent on one another.
100%. And now I want to talk about the book because I feel like that was one, I feel like spoke on the wheel and part of your life calling to write this. I love how it's antithetical to everything out there. So she wrote this like on the heels of the Lean In and the Boss Babes, and it's like why men love bitches. Like it's just it basically changed the lens and narrative completely. And I've read it and I love how you speak to how you are still very feminist in its principles. And you're our new Gloria Steinem for me. So move over. Or let's join hands. Yes, because I think it's important that we acknowledge that this pause is so needed for society. We're building the framework through raising children, and they're going to be the change makers that lead our world. So it's so important. But tell us how this book was, just a catharsis and, part of your own chapter.
First of all, on the Gloria Steinem thing, Bethany, like a lot of people point to Bethany Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, as like the pinnacle of feminism, right? Where they really disparage stay-at-home moms as really being a setback on feminism. About 5 or 7 years later, she actually wrote a second book that no one talks about called The Second Stage, where she talks about how feminism forgot family.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the wave of feminism we're in right now, which is this idea of finally realizing we got there, we proved our worth in the workplace, and we're still doing that. But now to make work actually work, we have to really be realistic about how we're different from men. We can't just pretend to be like men. We are powerful in our own right. and we have unique needs and wants. And to make life sustainable, we need to be able to have more options on the table, of which pausing or downshifting your career has to be included, because the reality of life is it's so long. And there are so many other things that pull at our ambition, that pull at our interests, that pull at our needs and wants. And by the way, 1 in 3 women, we think a lot about sort of the luxury of stay-at-home motherhood. The reality is 1 in 3 women today feel forced to pause their career because of the cost of childcare. So I think, as we sort of dismantle some of the tropes, we also have to shine a light on the reality that this isn't always, this isn't always a want. That sometimes it's a need, and we need to be able to support and empower every choice and validate it as one of many options that accommodate and support family, because that is a realistic part of American life. So that's number one. How did the book come to be? I want to just say, for those of you starting and planting seeds for something, this was not overnight. I had a lunch with friends today, and I wanted to sort of commemorate the moment with some of the women that were the women who inspired this work, because I met them on the playgrounds, because that's where I did my best networking. And I completely started crying, and I could not figure out why. And it's that this has been 9 years in the making. Right? When I had Bodhi and I was surrounded by all this incredible content that spoke to the traditional working parent, lean in included, as someone who was pausing and downshifting, and I was hearing all of these stigmas and stereotypes, but looking around and meeting women like you who were pausing and downshifting but didn't match the June Cleaver archetype, I just felt like, wait a second, but this is the new narrative. And where can we shine a light on that? But the reality is that I was building a platform about empowering pauses while I was on a career pause. And so for a long time, that looked like planting seeds for it in a little blog. And I think we diminish side projects. We diminish women's work, especially when it takes a lifestyle project. What are the other ones we use? Passion project, right? We write it off.
Side hustle.
Yeah. And it took a lot of saying, no, this is a big mission. This is a big conversation, but timing is everything. And it wasn't until my kids aged into school, which happened to collide with post-pandemic America, where we're all re-examining work and family, where I could finally say, I'm ready to put this book proposal together. I'm ready for there to be a title that on the shelves that actually doesn't just guide us to be better parents and doesn't just guide us to be better workers, but guides us to grow alongside our kid. So that if we choose to make room for it, we're also making room for ourselves. And so the book really follows the arc of what I needed, which was preparing and walking through identity and walking through finances and how to actually have the conversations with your partner to feel like an interdependent household, how to resign and know that you're not giving up on your own whole career. And then the middle section of the book is about navigating the day-to-day, mostly so that you're walking through it with a sense of, I get to have independent goals. My kids being perfect is not the metric of my success. How can I have small goals that I can feel like I'm dignifying the stage of life, that I'm moving myself forward? And I think of them in career, which can be creative goals, personal goals, and family goals, right? So I'm going to give you the example that my family goal was I wanted to have a silly household. And so to me, success was having a dance party every single Monday,
Aww.
right? It was little, but it made me feel like I was being intentional about the stage of life. And that middle section also goes through the blocks that I failed at, right? Like letting go of, if you're a stay-at-home mom, you have to be a super mom, right? Like we don't need to earn our stripes. We are allowed to enjoy motherhood.
I was a super mom.
Yeah, and how did you feel?
Still are, girl.
Well, I do. I get that vibe from you. I was not. I fed my children chicken nugget. I mean, you pick and choose what you focus on. And for me, I wanted to move the professional goal, which was like write a blog post 3 times a week. Right. And so I did that during nap time, and I gave my kids chicken nuggets literally 7 times a week, and Dr. Prager's, which I thought because it was Dr. Prager's and it said doctor was better for you. I'm sure it's still, oh yeah, sorry. But it wasn't good. And they're still very picky, but I made the choice. I'm happy with it. This is where we are. And, and the last section of the book is about unlocking all that possibility, which starts with like, you are still networking. You are still like the biggest myth in motherhood is that your network dries up. Actually, it can expand. Your interest can expand in directions.
Can I ask a quick question, Neha? And this has prompted me. No, at all. No, we'll have to talk about nutrition after. But Debbie had a really good insight, and she talked about how she was really in the space in between the careers and the stay-at-home moms, and really kind of navigating for both of them and supporting both of them. I got a lot of, you're so lucky that you get to stay at home. I could say back, well, you're so lucky you're climbing that corporate ladder. Like, you know, when I took that pause, my career kind of stalled. There was no online therapy or, you know, what I could do. So how did you kind of explain that? And if you can give us an example in the book, how to bridge that gap when you do get into that conversation. Or it would have been like, I would get, why did you do a home birth? That's dangerous. Or why did you use a crib? Or are you attachment parenting and co-sleeping? So there's a lot of, like, just like Debbie said, women butting heads against each other and not really coming together and knowing that we need to be really supporting each other. You know, we're a community of goddesses, of females and feminine, and that we have the strengths to really uphold each other. And that's what Dharma is, really sustain and uphold, you know, what we're here to do. So how would you kind of help women navigate that, especially new moms in the audience, or to be?
I think there's a lot of superpowers that come from motherhood, right? Like we all talk about motherhood as leadership training. You develop empathy, you develop creative skills, you create communication, empathy, all these. One of the superpowers, at least I developed, and I think many do, is you're building the muscle of letting go of what people think to make the right choice for you and your family right now. And I think you do it over and over again. You do it in the beginning when you choose formula, or you choose breastfeeding, or you choose some sort of combination, co-sleeping or sleep training. You will get judged at every moment, because when people judge, they're making sense of their own choice. And it has absolutely nothing to do with your choice, right? So the woman who said to me, and it was my mother-in-law, but I'm trying to be nice, but when she said, "Are you giving up? Like, do you feel like you're giving up?" And by the way, she happens to be very thoughtful and very curious. And she was taking a philosophy class at the time, and she was just making sense of her own decision, of her own paths and pivots, right? And I took it so hard. And I had to do my own work in owning my choice. And I did that. I mean, there's lots of tools that we talk about, but one, if you need a quick fix, I recommend 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. There's a section on criticism and holding it. And I think it helped in the entire motherhood journey. And I still have to practice it, right? In tuning into what's working for our family. We're going to face those micro decisions every time. And what's amazing is when you realize how much time you get back by not having to change anyone else's minds, right? You gain that time back. And when you realize that, you can focus that time back on enjoying this stage of life and the choices you're making.
Okay, the next P is partner. And I would say the biggest make or break decision in our life that we make is who we choose to spend our lives with. I don't know if you all agree, but it really leads you on a path. Of course, you can have a do-over if you need, but it really just kind of is the most pivotal decision. So with your partner, how do you advocate for yourself? That it's like, I have decided to stay home. Don't shame me. Don't say I have to go work. Like, what's the language around that?
So chapter 2 is really imperative to read, foundational, like have the money conversations, whether this is a financial no-brainer for your family or not. I think you talked about interdependent households and knowing right away that you're 50-50. I don't always think that it felt like 50-50 in our home, but it felt fair and equitable, right? And I think one thing that really helped me that I take you through in the book is my husband was running a tech startup at the time, and he took the model that he was applying to his business, his P&L, and he applied it to our family. And so we were running our household, even before we had kids, like a business operation, right? And the reason that's important is we were both investors in this joint household organization. We monitored the income in, or the cash in, and we tracked our cash out. This does not sound sexy or spiritual, but it really was so helpful, because what we did was we together assigned budgets for ourselves. And that was a practice we were in. And then when one of us, in my case, it was me, chose to paused my career. Initially, I downshifted. We adjusted accordingly, and it was cash in, cash out. But what was imperative that we decided right then in that money conversation was that we were adjusting the budgets together. We were both going to make shifts. We weren't like, I wasn't going to cost cut and not like cut my own hair suddenly because I was, staying at home. Together, we were going to make decisions to be able to support this choice because it benefited both of us. And we were an interdependent family, meaning I might have depended on the household income he was bringing in. He was depending on me at the time to be able to do all of the emotional and intellectual labor that kept our family afloat. I was the security net that let him single task in his startup at the time. Yeah. And knowing that we together were moving this organization forward helped later when we decided, okay, we're going to bring in a babysitter 2 days a week, or we're going to bring in a mother's helper when I had my second child, right? When we started making those investments, it wasn't just an investment in, oh, mom needs help. No, the whole household needs help, and everyone in this family deserves to be healthy and whole. And so we both deserve breaks on the weekend. And so I think the money conversation, while challenging and intimidating, can be really not a romantic exercise, but one that brings you closer and can be a really valuable one.
Yes, yeah, and yeah, you need to chime in because Sean, you and your partner are business partners.
That sounds so professional and so organized.
It's very organized.
And so mature. That is not what happened in my house.
Yeah, good for you.
So when the money part came around, when I just had my baby, and I did take a pause at some point, but I'll never forget, it was that moment where I'm like, oh, I was going to stay home with the kids. I had 2 babies at the time, and I'm going to relax and finally take my pause. And it was the first time he takes the Amex and he's following me around the house. What's that? What's that? And I was like, whoa. Never has he ever done that. Sorry, Sean, I have to just tell. And there was just something about that moment that I said, you know what? I'm going to go make my own money. There was just, there wasn't a mature conversation, our money, sharing. It was, it was the first time ever that, no, I don't know if he felt like he had the right to do that. I don't know what was going on. But as a woman, I didn't like it. And I said, and listen, everybody's different. You have that arrangement that really sounds lovely, the way it worked out. But for me, I just said, I just want to keep my one foot in because I felt I needed to do that, But everybody here, all of you are so far ahead. The fact that you're even here and Neha wrote this book and there's purpose involved. I mean, I didn't even know what purpose was back then. But the fact that you're even here and, growing the way you are doing, you're so ahead of just women in my generation. But that all sounds amazing. So do what she did.
Okay, a few more P's. Practice. I want to do kind of a rapid fire with you on how we can practice changing how we answer questions. So the first one is, when you're at a dinner or at the pool like you were, and someone says, "What do you do?" And you feel your hands getting clammy, and you're like, "Fuck, am I going to say?" What do you say?
I have a few scripts in the book, but my favorite is right now. Because when you say right now, it sort of grounds us in this is not permanent. This isn't who I am forever. I get to, if it was a privilege to choose, own it, or I am, if it wasn't. But I get to be with my kids, and I'm working on a project about women in work. Give the and if it's relevant or not, leave it if it's a guy whose eyes are glazing over. But right now I get to be with my kids. We'll see what comes next also works, right? Like leave room for the fluidity. I think we'll see what comes next was this like mantra to myself of this is one chapter in an ever evolving story.
How can we rewire when we want to say, I'm just a mom? Don't ever say that. How do we?
I would say the same thing. I think I'm just a mom. The reality is I think we're operating in a time we've all outgrown that.
Yeah.
I think the pandemic, the best thing that happened out of the pandemic was no one could hide how messy life was and how much time and care home life demands. And, I think one of the saddest realities of our life is we're started to assign financial value. You start to see this like salary.com data about how much would a stay-at-home mother be, get if she was paid a salary. No one's paying us that anytime soon. It is helpful data to have in your back pocket. But I think what we need to do next is dignify parenthood, which means we're not just saying like this adds economic value, it's unpaid labor, but we're saying, what's really interesting about parenthood is that we've dumbed it down to diapers and laundry, but it's actually the research that goes into building a community around your kid. It's about sitting on the phone with insurance companies, advocating for your insurance claim to be processed for your child who's recently diagnosed with diabetes. It's supporting your partner through his or her transitions through their work. It's, managing the household rhythms to keep everyone healthy and happy. And the reality is that work is awe-inspiring when you think of it that way. And I think if you really write down what are the parts of your day-to-day that you feel proud of, keep a running notes in your iPhone, in a Google Pages of something you feel proud of each day. It can be like winning that tantrum with your child, or not reacting to your partner in a way that you otherwise had, because some of the deepest personal growth happened for me in parenthood. And I think when we start to be able to recognize that, take stock of those like day-to-day ordinary moments that not only light us up, but drive us forward, you really shed that just a mom very quickly.
Yes. And where do you find your people? Loopwell is definitely a safe space for that, where you allow us to work here and just be and really focus on all things well-being. But where did you find your people so you're not living in silos?
There was this research that says that friendship happens most commonly in college because of repeat chance encounters, right? Because you're like in a class and then you bump into each other brushing your teeth in the dorm room. That happens in motherhood too, right? You start to go to the same places. You go to the coffee shop for the croissant, then you go to the baby movement class, and then you go to Madison Square Park on the way home to your apartment, and you start to see those same people. And, a lot of it is sort of exercising that muscle of finding the connector and saying yes to that opportunity. Or, my favorite advice from a friendship researcher that I interviewed was Danielle Bayard Jackson, who says, reflect on the identities that you're most proud of. In her case, she's Black, she's an entrepreneur, or she's a therapist, and she really loves history, right? So I made up that last one, but you get the picture. Anyways, so she found clubs or spaces that reflected that back to her. And she was really intentional about being able to find like-minded people to be able to cultivate the identities she was proud of, right? So in this case with Loopwell, if you care about wellness, if you care about spirituality or wholeness, being able to seek out environments that could reflect back people that serve that.
On that, you also have a lot of resources on Mother Untitled for women that did take a pause and now they're getting back into reigniting their careers or changing their careers, right? Trying something totally new, going back to school. You have a lot of resources, and I love that you included that. Can you speak a little bit of those resources of women getting back after the pause?
Yeah, I wanted a base of resources to be available to people without judgment. So I think for me, I was really wary of sending women in our community to a therapist or a financial coach or a relationship coach and them entering a space that they would feel judged. So it's a vetted Rolodex of coaches. Is Margaret Martin Brown in this room? Yay! Margaret's one of them. Vetted coaches and experts that have been there. They've either had lived experience with a pause or a downshift. And so I can trust that if you go there, whether you're looking for support, finding childcare, or in your marriage, or in your money, that it's a safe space for you.
And share some of the organizations you work with, like Mom Project. Like you really help build these women's resumes up so that they, shine as the leaders they truly are when they re-enter the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, my best advice for people when they're starting to put together that resume is start your resume when you're resigning, right? As close to resigning as possible, because I didn't. I didn't go back to my resume until I was submitting my book proposal. And I was like, oh my God, like, I don't even remember what I was doing. How long have I been out of the workforce? And, I think that you forget, first of all, when you take pen to paper on that time in your life, you realize it didn't evaporate. That base of skills, that experience goes with you. And then, like we were talking about auditing, the things that light you up and the things that you're proud of, every quarter or so, or whenever, you're compelled to start to look back and see like what things start to pop out, like, because sometimes that starts to reveal to you what you want to return to. There's this woman who organized a bus route for her local community. And she realized, like, actually, I really love project management. That was when I look back on this year of bullets, that's the thing that pops out to me. So now I'm going to start to look for more experiences in volunteering in my school or helping my friend's business. And slowly you build a portfolio of non-traditional experience that works as sub bullets that are really powerful under, I can say, career sabbatical for family life. And you have all these really powerful bullets that you then get to walk in and hold your head up high. You have this incredible past experience, and then you're adding to it all this non-traditional experience.
I am thinking to an IG reel that I came across. It was by this UN speaker, and she's like a Gen Z tech founder named Sinead Bovell. And she wrote, let's stop asking our kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because number one, AI is probably going to take that job. Sorry. And number two, it's all about their interests and their skills. And we all want transferable skills. And so whether it's leaning into family life or what you used to do in your previous job that you're now reinventing and applying to your new work, all of that matters. And so, yeah, it's so important to focus on the skills and the interests, not the titles. And yeah, now it's time for some Q&A.
When we first started our company, Debbie was adamant about hiring working moms. And this is when nobody did. It was a vast wasteland between show up to work 50, 60 hours a week or you're home. And she really pushed for it. She said, they're going to be more productive, they're going to be more energized, they can go home at 2:45 and be with their kids, and they'll come online at night. And quite honestly, I was a little reticent about it because it was so different. And she was right. We made the Inc. 5,000 3 years in a row. We had Adweek's fastest growing agency 3 years in a row. My question is to you, actually, it's a totally different world where you can actually work part-time, you can work from home. None of that ever existed when we first started our company. Do you think it's more pressure on women to have that flexibility and that opportunity? Or actually,
That's a great
less
question.
pressure?
I think that's a phenomenal question. Yeah. There's a blessing and burden with choice, right? When you have more choices available to you, you have to grapple with, what do I want? What's the thing I'm trading off on then, right? If I'm choosing to see this book out into the world, even though it's a self-determined company, my schedule is self-determined, that means I'm determining that I'm not going to be home till 5 o'clock. That is a choice, and that is hard, right? That comes with a mental math and calculation. If I'm investing in help, but the work, technically could end at 3, there's just more mental math that goes into it. And I think that sometimes my concern is that as we advocate for more flexible work options, and we want that, there's going to be a new myth of doing it all, and it's not going to leave much margin for women to take care of ourselves. So we're either working or with our family, and I think that's going to be an interesting new paradigm shift, because oftentimes too, as we all start pursuing work we care about, then work very quickly becomes self-care, right? So there's this really, there are some new issues that will naturally crop up, but I think we're still at a time where if our work day matched our school day, we would be well served.
My name is Carrie. I want to sit in a room where I'm not going to introduce myself as a mother, but I am a mother, a 17 and 19-year-old. But I'd love for it to not be the most important thing I mentioned right at the top. But I really like what you're saying about having a pause. I think that's so important. I've been pivoting since my kids, got into kindergarten. When they got into kindergarten, I was like, oh, it's happening. It's me. And then all of a sudden it's not, right? And now I've got teenagers. Some people might hear it, that and I've got a teenager who, like, if I say hello, he wants to die. He wants me to die too. And so you're like, what have I sacrificed all this time?
Oh man.
Just to be hated by a 17-year-old.
It's going to happen to all of you.
Right? Are you feeling it?
You will.
These little children that love you will turn around and roll their eyes and give you the finger. And you're like, this is unbelievable.
Oh my
I just gave my whole life to you. And now I'm 54 years old, and I'm not 54, but I will be. And nobody wants to hire me because now I'm too old. So I think that's the next conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We can hit pause, but real quick, it's coming up behind you, and your moment's over. And your kids are like, I gotta go live my life. And it's like, oh, I thought we were like hanging out in the kitchen together. We're a team, and I take care of you, and now they want me to pay $90,000 a year in college. Okay, this relationship got real toxic quick. I think that's the next conversation.
Yeah. She's a comedian. I can see that. Is that you could be like the next Zarna Garg.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've got a kid in this age, you're like,
yeah. I think a lot of the book was a roadmap so that when women stepped into this stage of life, they didn't wake up feeling like they've lost that sense of self, that there's some sort of, even if they didn't develop a side project that there was a sense of planting seeds toward building a strategic network and explore using the tools you have available to you, whether that's masterclass or Instagram or school volunteering or your husband's business, to flex some sort of muscles that can build your story back. So that when you're returning, you have a really strong portfolio that you're excited about. And I think that if you're still sitting about a year out from returning and you're saying, like, I'm feeling that nudge, I think use it to get clear on what that next thing is. It's like chapter 7 through 9, like figure out, because I think that so often as well, I just need that next thing. I need to return when there's still a bit of like in between, how can I build out my story a little bit further and get really clear on what comes next. I do really think that there's a future of work that includes all the women who are figuring out that to make work, they're going and starting their own businesses, and then they're hiring other women back because we understand the value, right? And then we're creating this little circular economy. And I'm looking at you guys, like Debbie, you guys did that, right? You started this, you knew the value Kanan offered. And I think by creating spaces, when we go off to create work that works for us, then we bring other women with us. And I think that that's a really interesting next conversation.
100%. Well, okay, that kind of closes out this panel and Q&A.
Thank you. And if you don't know, that's total nonsense. Can I just ask you how you came up with that name?
Yeah, so I mean, it came to me when I was in the shower. I was like, mom sense, nonsense, love puns, and I feel like we all have a built-in sixth sense. It's our intuition. You don't have to be a parent to have it. It's kid sense, auntie sense, doesn't matter. But I feel like our inner knowing is our North Star, and so you have to always trust.
Check it out
Subscribe
if
to
you
the
have
show.
not seen it, and thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming, and please coming back to Loopwell. Okay,
I want to thank all of you who attended our event in person. It was so nice to meet you and give you a hug and hear your personal stories. They really fill my cup. Check out upcoming programs on the Loopwell website at www.loopwithus.com. I love that we can stay connected online and offline.
Thanks for listening to this episode of That's Total Mom Sense. You can listen to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for That's Total Mom Sense. You can learn more about my guests by logging on to www.thatstotalmomsense.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, where I'm most active on social media. My handle is @KanikaChaddaGupta. And if you have ideas for show topics or guests you can't wait to have on the show, write to me at thatstotalmomsense@gmail.com. And lastly, please rate, review, and subscribe to That's Total Mom Sense if you haven't already. Thanks for being in my tribe.